Hey everybody, time for another midweek chat. It is August, well into August. August the 20th, I think. 17th was a Sunday. Here we are to Wednesday. It is the feast of St. Bernard of Clairvaux that I'll talk about him a little bit. There's plenty of beautiful scenes by the water. Chippewa River is just right over there, but I almost always do water ones. I thought we'd do flowers today and get a little shot of the new field house, so where Bob Dylan played on April 5th this year. So I'm walking in the footsteps of Bob Dylan. I walked in the footsteps of Bob Dylan in January too. I went out to New York City, and that was fun. Walked down the streets where he went by his old apartment place. So anyway, that's the only time I've been in the Sonotog Center so far, but it's a big new place in Eau Claire, where the Blue Goals will play. There's like a health clinic. It's just kind of a massive complex. So right on the Chippewa River, across the street from Carson Park. So, okay, got some stuff. Let's see. Footsteps of Bob Dylan. More important, in June, I got to walk in the footsteps of Jesus. That was better. And I am starting to try to get some people who might want to go to the Holy Land to commit to that trip. So I have reservations for January 29th through February 13th. As you might imagine, because of the situation there and the troubles and the news and the Gaza war, people aren't flocking to sign up. But if I could get, I'd love if I could get 20 people, that'd be just great. Usually we take 48. So I can say we were there in June. We had a good time. We came back joyful, not because we were finally home, but because we had a really great time together. So I'm confident that it would be an excellent experience for people. The war in Gaza just seems endless. It's also not on the pilgrim's path. That did not interfere with our pilgrimage at all. We were delayed coming home because that's when Israel and us, I guess, attacked Iran, and then Iran had missile reprisals. And we were there for that. Even there, we felt safe, and the tour company took really good care of us. But the airports, we had a delay of 3 days because of some airports closed and airlines stopped flying. So, but that's really a unusual thing, that one. So anyway, I'd like to go, and if we can't go, I can pretty much cancel with just a minor penalty if we cancel by late October. So I'm going to try to see if I can get people committed by early October. So I have itineraries. Be happy to send you one, share it with you, answer any questions. So pilgrimage, Holy Land, could be great. Parish news. Hey, or more parish news. The Olsons, Jerry and Bonnie, pretty well known. They got married at St. James Church, and they've lived in St. James Parish for all that time. Since then, I think maybe they moved. I think all that time. And Jerry's big Knight of Columbus, Bonnie's big PCCW, and just very giving people in the parish and active. Anyway, they got married at St. James in the cafeteria, what we call Rourke Hall now. Why? Why would they get married in the cafeteria? Well, the church wasn't built yet. They got married in 1960, and I think the church got built the next year. So that's pretty good. So 65-year anniversary. Congratulations to Bonnie and Jerry. They came to Mass. I just love it when people want to come to Mass on their anniversary and also receive a blessing, but it just seems like a great thing. It's not the only indication of a life of faith, but I think it's a pretty good indication that church is important to you, that God, when you have a big thing in your life, a big birthday, a big anniversary, let's go to church. Helps make it holy, right? So we enjoyed giving them that blessing at our 9 o'clock Mass this morning. Golf. So I mentioned the golf outing will be coming up on September 14th. Thanks to Ellen Erickson for organizing that. It is, as I mentioned, it'll be Leo the 14th, our Pope, his 70th birthday, and we'll celebrate with a little golf. He's said some pretty good things lately. I have these notes. I don't know if Pope Leo. he was talking to the bishops in the Amazon about how important it is to proclaim Christ and to do so firmly, not in a way that puts down anybody, but in a way that asserts Christ's goodness, his proclamation of God's love for everybody, his proclamation that we need to love one another and treat one another with justice, and to get the word out there. He was talking to the Amazonian bishops. I don't know if that means the Brazilian bishops or what Amazonian all includes, but around the Amazon. And he said, injustice, I like this quote, injustice, like people being oppressed and treated poorly, injustice retreats wherever Christ's name is proclaimed. He went on to examine how proclaiming Christ heals societies. In this mission, the Pope reflected, we are moved by the certainty, confirmed by the history of the Church, that wherever the name of Christ is preached, injustice recedes proportionally. For as the Apostle Paul asserts, all exploitation of man by man disappears if we are able to receive one another as brothers and sisters. That's probably a translation from the Latin or Italian, so all exploitation of one human being against another disappears if we are able to receive one another as brothers and sisters. We sang where charity and love prevail today at Mass today, and that's good because of the anniversary, and also Bernard of Clairvaux, who I'll get to in a little bit. Let's finish up parish news, though. September 3rd, that'll be a Wednesday, the school Mass starts up again. So today was a Wednesday. We had our usual half-hour Mass from 9 to 9:30, roughly. And the school Masses are a little longer. The kids have more parts, there's music. The homilies can get a little long just because it's a dialogue with the children most often. Not because I'm long-winded. But things are starting up. That's just a couple weeks, right? Weddings. We have weddings. People like to hear about weddings. This is just a little bit crooked, isn't it? I don't know if that's any better. Oh, look. Something fell on my paper. A beautiful little flower petal. Wonder where that came from. So on the 6th, Jenny Mayer and Ben Kincaid will get married at St. James. 1 week later, June 13th, Madison Borofka and Brady Redwine will be married at St. James. 1 week later, September 20th, Brianna Brickner and Michael Carbonara will get married at St. James. Michael's from Boston. He must get asked this a lot, but I couldn't resist. I said, do you make a good carbonara? Or it's carbonaro. I think his name is Carbonaro. But sometimes you go to an Italian restaurant and they'll have fettuccine carbonara. I love it. It's so good. It's got like, I don't know, it's like the pasta and the cream and like some peas and a little bacon. But what I really like is it's kind of got like an over easy egg in there. Or sometimes it's just the whole egg is just mixed up. I think that's more common. There was a place in Menominee that had their own style where they just put 2 over easy eggs on top of it. I thought that was fantastic. Anyway, he said, no, I don't think we make carbonara, but my mom does make a mean red sauce. So they do have some Italian cooking there. Anyway, so boom, 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 a triple header of one after another. Speaking of triple headers, too bad the Brewers lost that double header yesterday, isn't it? They were just crushing on Monday, and then they got rained out for the second game. And we'll see if they can hang on and have a great season, get some of our injured players back. And then in October, and sadly it won't be at St. James, but parishioners, and they wanted to get married where they were from. First in Duluth, then I think they're going to welcome me at Notre Dame Parish in Chippewa Falls to officiate the wedding of Ella Jacobitz and Michael Hensley. So that'll be good. All right, so we got some weddings. That's good. I heard this, and don't quote me on this, and maybe I shouldn't even say it, but it made sense to me. I remember my first assignment when we had wedding preps, there was a handout. And of all the papers that I've saved over the years, 2 I look for all the time in case they pop up, and I never find them. One is a beautiful act of contrition that the Paulists Paulist fathers wrote, and I handed out to the parish some years ago. And I know I had a stack of extra ones. And anyway, I cannot find that. Larry, my friend, parishioner Larry, he had one. He used to always use it. And he doesn't know where his is. And so, anyway. But the other one is this handout from the early 90s. Speaking of act of contrition, so a lot of times people worry, I don't know the act of contrition. They'll make a confession, and part of making a confession is you say the act of contrition. Most people maybe learn the one I learned. Oh my God, I'm heartily sorry for having offended you, and I detest all my sins because you're just punishments, and most of all because they offend you, my God, who are all good and deserving of all my love. And I firmly resolve, with the help of your grace, to sin no more, to avoid the near occasion of sin. There's little variations on that, but that's a common one. That's what I learned. Still in practice. But people worry, like, oh, here comes a machine that's making noise. Darn it. Let it pass. What could it be? This is my pet peeve in life. Machines that make noise. It was a lawnmower on the sidewalk for some reason. But was I talking about pasta carbonara? No, I was talking about confessions, act of contrition. And well, people will worry because they don't know an act of contrition, or they'll know one and they rattle it off just like I rattled it off. Some people come in and they make up their own, and I think it's wonderful. So if you have that gift or ability, basically an act of contrition, the elements are, I'm sorry for my sins. And with your help, oh God, I resolve to do better. I resolve to turn away from those sins and try not to sin, to do the good. And often they'll say that in their prayer, and I always sort of tack on, with God's help. Like it's not just us trying to muscle our way to holiness. But you might think those two elements, I'm sorry for my sins, I resolve to do better with God's help. I mean, that's just that as a good act of contrition if you want to remember something shorter. But something, from the heart that you feel rather than just kind of rattle off. That's always the challenge. Rote prayers are great. They're a great place to turn to when we want to just say a prayer or think of an intention. Like if I want to pray for somebody, which I often do, you might be happy to know. I just hold that intention in my heart, then say a Hail Mary, say an Our Father, say a prayer that you know. It can also be a spontaneous prayer, like, help Millie, who's got cancer, and I think she's really afraid in her hotel room tonight, Lord, and send your Holy Spirit to her to calm her and to give her increase in faith, hope, and love, no matter what's going on in her body. But please do help her body as well. Some kind of prayer like that. I mean, that's a good prayer too. But I think you can kind of hold the general intention and send up a prayer, by rote if the words are hard to find. That's my 2 cents. Okay. Was I talking about something and then I got off on... We're talking about weddings. Other parish news. So Elliot Munsinger, our Eagle Scout candidate, who's only in 7th grade, maybe entering 8th, maybe even entering 7th. I don't know. But he's really young to get his Eagle Scout award. But his project is on our grounds, a fire pit. So we do have a fire ring that we just throw wherever. But he's going to make a nice pit with paving stones, and it'll be very nice. And be behind the KC shed. You'll be able to see it when you go by 11th Street, the front of the church, as you look west. There's the church, the school, and then there's this KC shed, and then in front of that. So it'll be between the 8th and the 9th holes of the disc golf course. Okay. I know I digressed to talk about the act of contrition. I forget why. If I was on something interesting or not. But I think that's the list I have of parish news. Oh, the handout. Yeah, because the handout of about the act of contrition, the Paulist one. Okay, but the other thing I wish I had was this. It was a handout about statistics or surveys about marriage, divorce, and spiritual life, or mutual spiritual life, shared spiritual life. And, briefly, I'll just say it as it is. And people can interpret statistics in different ways. So, take this with a grain of salt, but see if you don't agree that it kind of makes sense that it would be true. And it was in print, and that's why I wish I had it. I wish I knew the source. But so it was back in the early 90s, and it said, well, roughly speaking, I think maybe this has gotten better since then. Roughly speaking, 1 out of every 2 marriages ends in divorce. I think that was the way it was in the 70s, 80s. I think maybe now, since there's just fewer marriages, those who decide to marry are maybe better prepared or more resolute in their decision, and so maybe that's less. I don't know, but for a while it was like 1 and 2. So then the thing was, well, those who get married in a church, those who get married and are married in a church, and it's like 1 and 3. So maybe a little bit helpful, maybe an indicator of some religious conviction that will help them stay together. But it wasn't a huge difference, 1 and 2, 1 and 3. But I guess when you add it up, it's hundreds of thousands. And then it's those who are married, were married in a church and go to church together on a regular basis. Then it flipped to like 1 in 50. Okay, so that's a pretty big leap, right? And then it was those who marry in a church, go to church together on a regular basis, and who share somewhat vulnerable prayer life together. So not simply, it's good to pray before meals, but I wouldn't say that's a shared prayer life. Oh gosh, here's my... What's he doing? He goes all the way on the sidewalk one way, and then all the way on the sidewalk the other way, and all he's doing is making noise and burning gas. Okay, so I'm such a critic. So 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 50, and then if you get married, marry in a church, go to church regularly, and share a vulnerable prayer life, which is not, so it's not just like a road prayer, pray before meals, but maybe you sit down and you share what you want from God this week, or why you're grateful, what the blessings you had in the given week, what you need help with from God. I think especially that last one, if you're doing that with your spouse, there is a certain vulnerability, like I need help. And I think for most people, if you see someone you love, whether or not you had a great day of joy together, share that she needs help with something, or he needs courage to do something. I think it evokes something in your heart. You want to love them with God's own love, because you want them to have that courage. You want them to get through this situation. You want them to believe that God wants that too, and will help them. So when you have that kind of prayer life, kind of sharing your honest thoughts about a scripture passage together, or what, then it said 1 out of 250 on that thing. So 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3, 1 out of 50, 1 out of 250, depending on how much of a spiritual life you share. Which I didn't know, it makes sense to me. I can't prove it, but if you believe that God has brought you together, and it's no fail-safe thing. And whenever I talk about marriage, it's always in the back of my head. Some really great people faithful, good people that have divorced, and the pain that they've experienced in that. And I don't want people to think that I'm judging that, or that they lack faith, whatever. I mean, it's just, there's some really hard things that happen. And we pray for new beginnings to our God of new beginnings for people that suffer that pain and loss. So 18. So, gosh, I got 2 different reports today. I was just really, there's no good news in the Gaza war right now, but there was really some awful news. So hope we follow Holy Family Parish. A lot of the money that we were sent, we're going to go to the missionary of charities who is going to them. I got Sister Julia sent me a picture of the missionary of charity who will take the money over to Gaza when she gets a chance to go, and she wants to go all the time. So there's this evacuation order where it seems like rather than bring an end to the war, Israel's using the opportunity to maybe claim the whole beautiful white dog. Maybe I should have the camera face the other way. There's a lot of beautiful people walking back and forth. They want to just have the whole country. So they're evacuating, they're moving people. There's talk about moving Gazans to South Sudan, or, I don't know. But it just sounds really like, human dignity is severely threatened there, and forcibly displaced people. So anyway, Sunday or Monday, I got the word and then on the Vatican website that this parish got an evacuation order. So all the hundreds of people that take refuge at Holy Family Parish, and right where the church is, it's like, oh, and the government was giving out tents. In the bulletin, I put that the parish was giving out tents because that's what I thought I read, but then I read later it was the government was giving tents. So it's like, look, you get a free tent. Leave your house. Go, leave your home. But then today, on the Vatican story, it said that the pastor said there's not been an evacuation order for Holy Family Parish. Around the parish, yeah, but not for the parish. So I don't know if Father Romanelli heard something, if Israel changed, or if Father Romanelli didn't understand the first order or what. But either way, it's no good, and a lot of suffering. So I don't know what to read, because some of it may be outdated, but he just said another Sunday of war. When will they find peace? He concluded, Father Romanelli, there's no agreement. They do not want to release hostages, or only partially. The other side says no altogether. The only thing that is certain is that the bombs continue to cause deaths of civilians and children. The numbers are terrible. Yeah. So I think his other summary comment was the children need everything. Like, they don't have education, they don't have health care, they don't have food. They need everything. So hopefully we'll get some relief over to them. Pray for the end to that war. So last week I got some nice feedback on Cardinal Newman, the story I told about how I sort of came to faith with his help. And I didn't read one of his poems that he wrote. That's kind of a nice, beautiful poem. It's called Lead Kindly Light. The Newman Parish, which is appropriate because it's the Newman Parish, named after Cardinal Newman, is at their funerals they sing the song Lead Kindly Light. And apparently he was on a boat and the moon was out and he was being thoughtful and praying, and this poem came to him. Lead kindly light amidst the encircling gloom. Lead thou me on. The night is dark and I am far from home. Lead thou me on. Keep thou my feet. I do not ask to see the distant scene. One step is enough for me. You can rewind that, listen if you're intrigued by that, but that's it's a 4-stanza poem. The other stanzas did not speak to me as much as the first stanza. And I think when they sing the song, it's just the first stanza. I'm not sure. Let's talk a little about Bernard. So one of the things that, guess what Cardinal Newman and Bernard of Clairvaux have in common? They lived 700 years apart, so they weren't contemporaries. Bernard of Clairvaux was born around 1090 and he died around 1160, something like that. They're both doctors of the church. Newman was just named a doctor of the church, and Bernard of Clairvaux was proclaimed a doctor of the church by Pius VIII whenever he reigned, I think the early 1800s. So, do you hear the drums? I think the marching, I don't know if it's the drum and bugle corps in town or if it's just the UW Eau Claire marching band. But he was quite a remarkable person. He was declared a saint 30 years after his death, which is a little unusual. And he was, his mother died when he was just a little tot, and he ended up joining a monastery at Citeaux, which became the beginning of a group called the Cistercians. I'm pretty sure those are what we commonly call the Trappists, so pretty austere group of men, I think women, Cistercians too. It's a reform of the Benedictine order. So Benedict is famous for a beautiful, wonderful saint, famous for his moderation in all things. So he wasn't like super strict. You don't have to go around cold and without shoes. And we can have, don't don't make ourselves full of luxury. We're trying to follow Jesus here, but we don't have to be too severe. And the Cistercians were more in the severe mode. Silence, let us silence. And the reform of the Benedictines. But they seem to get along. Whenever I go to St. John's, there's a lot of Cistercian students that are studying at St. John's, the mainline Benedictines. Speaking of that, real quick, while I think of it, your prayers are requested for Sister Margaret Michaud. So we got a word that she's been falling, and she's been kind of a care center for a while, and has had some memory problems. And she was just a great presence in Eau Claire for so many years, and gave really bright with philosophy and math. She taught at Viterbo, and I don't know, just a really good, wise, soft-spoken, peacemaking, humble, non-arrogant person in the church. Good leader, led by example, and her wisdom without having to be real loud. Anyway, she has a form of cancer, and they decided she's kind of too old maybe to treat that. So they thought maybe weeks to months, but she's sort of in a new stage and she was aware enough to say, yeah, I don't want to go after treating that. I'm ready to let go into God when the time comes. So our great Benedictine friend, Sister Margaret, around St. Cloud, Minnesota. But Bernard, he, at 26, I'll just read some of his quotes. He became, basically became a bishop and a leader, and though he was he talked a lot about love. And those were kind of dark times in the church, the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages. And there's something about when love hits your heart and you just realize, hey, I think there's really something to God, because I can feel his peace in my life and his love. And I want to share it, and I want to love others. That's the name of the game. That's what Jesus is all about. And he seemed to have that. So I'll just read a bunch of his quotes. They're really, really pretty good. There are those who seek knowledge for the sake of knowledge. We call that curiosity. There are those who seek knowledge to be known by others. That is vanity. There are those who seek knowledge in order to serve. That is love. Rest in God alone. We know no peace in the world, but so man knows no peace in the world, but he has no disturbance when he is with God. It's that quiet. I think I mentioned at Mass last weekend, the HVAC was just humming away after communion, a little bit loud. At least it was a nice soft, it wasn't like these lawnmowers and leaf blowers. But, and we're just sitting quiet after communion, and then all of a sudden it stopped. The HVAC noise, and just with this sheer silence just dropped on the church. And I just thought that was so wonderful. It reminded me of this: rest in God alone. Whoever rests in God has no disturbance when you're with God. Here's a quote for dog lovers: who loves me will love my dog also. So I don't know if he's like Teresa of Avila or Mother Teresa. Any good quote they just attribute to him. I don't know. It said in this website that he said, hell is paved with good intentions. That's kind of a famous quote I've heard many times. Jesus, the very thought of thee with sweetness fills my breast, but sweeter far thy face to see, and in thy presence rest. You can feel the tenderness and love there. A saint is not someone who never sins, but one who sins less and less frequently, and gets up more and more quickly. Like that one. The three most important virtues to live by, according to St. Bernard of Clairvaux, are humility, and guess what? Humility. So, chew on some of those quotes. You can rewind, pick your favorite one, and take it to prayer. Okay, speaking of which, Lord, we pray for your world this mid-August day. We thank you for blessings. We ask you to give us hearts full of gratitude that are also sensitive to the great suffering in the world. Help us to see a path when we can help. Help us to take it. And if it's your will, reward us with joy in our efforts to serve you. God bless you, everybody. We'll see you later. Father Shev's this weekend, by the way, so everybody can look forward to that. Nice, concise, and powerful homily always. Bye.